We're motivated to rebuild the most capable military in the world. That's why I'm here. That's what the president has asked me to do. But doing so does require tough decisions, and we are prepared to make them.
Wow, is he ever. In fact, that leads with fire the generals, doing something that just has shocked the Pentagon world, and man, is it long overdue. Overnight, if you hadn't seen it, first of all, President Trump fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Brown. But then here comes Hegseth on the heels of that, who fired 5 additional generals. My only comment is, I hope this isn't the end. I hope that there's a lot more to come, because there needs to be. This is certainly nothing new that I've come up to. Actually, in 2013, while still in active duty, authored a piece in the Armed Forces Journal that was called Purge the Generals. In that article, I wrote, replace a substantial chunk of today's generals, starting with the 3- and 4-star ranks. This is likely the most controversial step, yet also the most necessary. It is unlikely that today's top leaders, who are products and benefactors of the existing system, have the appropriate motivation or buy-in for substantial change. New leadership is required. Now, that was in the context of the ongoing Afghanistan war. I had already written in both 2009, 2010, and 2012 that we were headed towards a defeat in Ukraine, in Afghanistan. Sorry, getting those failures mixed up in my mind. And I said then, listen, it is a product of generalship, and it was self-evident that we were going in the wrong direction. It wasn't even just the battlefield. It was also, and I laid an extensive article. By the way, the link is in the description here if you want to read what I wrote back then and the things that I identified, all of which have gotten worse since that time. But it always starts at the top. If the leader is not on board with what needs to happen, if the leader is not forward thinking, nobody else in the system is. And the Pentagon, listen to me, the Pentagon is designed for no change. It is staffed with people who benefit from the status quo, who were raised up in the status quo, and who want to perpetuate the status quo indefinitely. They don't ever want to hold anyone accountable unless it's for some narrow bands of moral failings or so. And in the Army, there's almost nothing. I have lamented so many times over the years when you had generals that were abysmal failures in the most important things, combat, or in the advancement of future combat systems, the design of the future force, etc. And they get promoted. They get big medals pinned on their chests for failing. It's shocking to me, and I've not hesitated written about it. And that is so important, because actually 2 days ago, Secretary Hegseth listed out a number of things. He said that he wants to be a lot more transparent than any Secretary of Defense has been in recent memory. And so he actually sat down in front of cameras and detailed some controversial other things that he's doing. Now, whether he succeeds in any of these remains to be seen, but I'm loving the things that he's saying here, because these changes are long overdue.
Ever since I've taken this position, the only thing I care about is doing right by the warfighters, by the troops. In short, we want the biggest, most badass military on the planet, on God's green earth.
And I can just tell you, as a former member of the armed forces, someone who has 4 combat deployments of my own, that is music to my ears to hear that you want to bring back the warfighter ethos, that you want the Pentagon to focus on doing its primary job, which is to fight and, if necessary, win wars to keep us safe. So first of all, he wants to frankly address what is going to be cut.
With DOGE, we're focusing as much as we can on headquarters and fat and redundancies and top-line stuff that allows us to reinvest elsewhere. We welcome DOGE, and finding those efficiencies is how we save taxpayer dollars. That is a good thing that, of course, is being distorted through the media, their hyperventilation, and it just goes entirely unreported for the most part.
Obviously, he gave a clue there. That was, I think, 2 days ago, so before the announcement of the firing of the generals, but he said headquarters staff. Now, that has been one of my pet peeves for the longest time. It's been Colonel Doug McGregor's pet peeves for many, many years, who's been on our show a lot. He has often lamented that the number of 4-star generals in the U.S. Army today is, I want to say it's like 38, and I may be getting these numbers not precisely right, but I believe that during the height of World War II, when we had, I think, 8 million men in the Army under arms that were on active duty at the height. There was like 8, I think, 7 or 8, something like that. You know, a vast difference. The bloat in the headquarters has continued on. The Army will often say, hey, you know, we have this new need here. We want to put in a special department here. And of course, we need a 3 or a 4-star general to run it up. And so they put it in effect and they start doing this job or whatever. Then the job kind of is done, it goes away, but the headquarters doesn't seem to. The 4-star or 3-star billet doesn't seem to ever go away. And you got to ask, man, if the Army today is somewhere around 480,000, why do we need so many Army 4-star generals when we had 8 million under arms? It was a fraction of that number. That just tells you they love headquarters. And now, those are the things he talked about that he's going to cut. He also talked about what he's not going to cut.
We also list on page 2, which I've marked up here in our memo, what is not part of the 8% refocusing of funds. It's stated very clearly here. Southwest border activities, combating transnational criminal organizations, an audit, nuclear modernization, Virginia-class submarines, the Golden Dome or Iron Dome, one-way attack drones, UAVs, cybersecurity, core readiness, training, the defense industrial base, and it goes on. They and other key programs are off the table under this program. They're too important.
Those give you a little bit more of a clue into where he's going, and it's the right direction. I want to look at just a few of those. Border security he's talking about. That's something that's been long overdue. We have to have a secure border so that only those people that we deem are legal and authorized to come into the country that will benefit the country, those are the only ones that need to come in. Anyone else has to go through the process or they can't come in. That should be so self-evident that no one should question it. And I mean no one. One of the other things she said there is more noteworthy. Submarines. He specified submarines as opposed to just Navy because the nature of war has changed. And the surface war fleet, I'm telling you, has already undergone a radical change, and we just haven't recognized it yet. I think all of these aircraft carrier groups that we have, and we're continuing to build and fund more, those days have gone. Unless you're doing like a Haiti intervention or something against the Taliban or something in the Middle East where the adversary doesn't have an air force, doesn't have a missile force, then there's some utility in there. You can get that done. But do you really need all that firepower if that's the limited ability of your enemy? But if you're talking about a peer-to-peer competitor or a near-peer competitor, somebody who does have an air force, who does have a navy, who does have naval drones, who does have anti-ship missiles, etc., those surface ships are going to get knocked out. And you don't have to go any further than to look at the Russia-Ukraine war and to see what happened with the Russian Black Sea Fleet. It had to completely relocate outside of the range of the Ukraine side just because of their, I think it was called the Poseidon missiles and these naval drones that have become now proliferated. And I promise you, everybody in the world is seeing that these really inexpensive, relative speaking drones, naval drones, and probably undersea drones as well, can wreak havoc on the surface fleets. The days of the aircraft carrier and these big battleships or warships, the battleships have long since been mothballed, but even like the cruisers, the destroyers, etc., anything that floats can be sunk. And the defenses have been outpaced by offensive capacity. But the submarine, though, is still very, very difficult for enemies to find. So we need to expand our use on that if we want to be able to project power, if we want to be able to have mobile firepower that can move successfully around the water or can interdict enemy submarine warfare. You need a lot more submarine and anti-submarine warfare capacity. That's just where the things are going. So it shows that Hegseth is focused on the right thing and is looking forward. That's really good news. He talked about specifically UAVs, drones. That is absolutely significantly changing the nature of ground war. So he's focused on the right thing there too. This is what they call the Golden Dome or the Iron Dome system for the United States, air defense capacity. Obviously the side that can defend itself against enemy aerial attack, enemy drone attack, enemy missile attack is going to be the side that has the best chance to win, because right now that's exactly how it's playing out in the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukraine is deficient in all those categories. Russia is superior, and it's playing out then on the front lines, which continue to move in the direction that the Russians want. So the fact that he's focused on all those kinds of things, it gives me a lot of confidence that the secretary is moving our force in the right direction.